What's going on, guys? Welcome back to DaddJeep Garage. This week we're tackling something on my list that I've wanted to do for a long time, and the more I push my Jeep, the more I push myself. It's becoming more important. We're going to install a roll cage. So we're installing a Trail Gear Rock Defense sport cage, essentially, which just goes from the B-pillar to the windshield and adds an upright bar and some crossbars. But we're going to add a bunch of tubing to this to make it even stronger and to actually create a much safer cage. We're going to be adding a harness bar with an X-brace in the B-pillar because we're going to save this B-pillar. It's going to maintain the stock thin-walled B-pillar of this cage, so I want to reinforce it best I can, so we're going to be adding that X-brace to it. Alright, so we've got this piece unbolted. Now we just got to rip it out of here and get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. So the next step is there is a Torx bolt in the back here that holds this little stub on. So we're going to go ahead and grab a Torx tool and get that thing out of there. So per Trail Gear's instructions, I went ahead and I installed this windshield plate, bolted it in place, and then this upper bar here measures 23 7/8 from the tub to the tube. So now we need to install this curvy bar, which is the A-pillar bar. So in order to do that, you need to line up the foot plate on the angled part of your floor. Go ahead and hold this in place up here. And the most important part of this angled bar is to make sure it's centered between these windshield bolts so you can actually remove them and fold down the windshield. So now we've got the plate somewhat in place, top piece in place. Now we can kind of center this up between these two bolts. Just kind of rotate the bar until it fits properly. Really, the coat feels good when you get it right. And then you can see you have good access to both of these bolts, and then you can go ahead and tack the axles. Okay. First part of this cage is done. I mean, really, the instructions are pretty good. It's going together well. All the notches seem to be lined up. I don't have any big gaps. Put this dash bar in, that went in okay. Went to put this upper crossbar in, and it wasn't even close. It was really tight. Went ahead and measured and realized it was about 1/4 of an inch off. So way back to the beginning of these instructions, it had us taking this bar, the one that connects the A and B pillars, centering it up between the bolts on this plate. I don't like that. I'm going to cut those tacks off. Again, this is reinforcing why just one little tack at every connection at this point. Easy to make some changes. So I went ahead and I cut the tack on the other side so I could get this upper bar wedged in place, and it pushed that side way over on that bracket. So I think I'm going to try to go ahead and cut this tack and get this whole cage to square up, because right now I think it's way out of whack. So I guess you kind of had to tack that in there in the first place to hold it there to get the next steps done. But now we're undoing these tacks at the windshield frame so we can get the top of that squared up. And I haven't even put the bolts in the floor yet because I really felt things needed to move around. And once I drill a hole in the floor, it's kind of hard to undrill a hole in the floor. So I've kind of left that just floating down there. Once I get this top centered and retacked, these two bars, once they're in place, are going to dictate the squareness of these upright legs. So I think by getting these two done and square first, my feet should come in. But again, I'm still tacking everything, so if this theory is wrong, we'll just cut the tacks and do it again. So the other... So it works out nice. I have an exact even 2 inches from the outside edge of the tube to this corner of the windshield frame on both sides. So So we just need to ratchet strap that a little tighter, and we can weld it back in place. My instructions say from this bar to this bar is 22 inches, center to center. So I'm going to measure from this edge to this edge. Not even close. I'm at 15, so that's got to go in a bunch. When I measured this piece from the inside of the cope, it was 48 inches. So if those center to center are 22, 22 and 22 is 44. Out of a 48-inch piece of tube, they're going to be almost touching. I better check those instructions again, because that can't be right. I think, obviously, I can put them where I want, but I don't know where I want, so now I have to think. So before we get into figuring out where I want these bars, let's talk a little bit about cage design. And I have a really good example. I built this 1/10 scale version of my Jeep quite a few years ago because I wanted to learn about the roll cage and the tubing. So I built this loosely based off of the Ultra 4 rules. So I added the door bars and the node here that's required for a door bar. I added the windshield spreaders, which I will be adding to this cage. And I'm hoping you can pick up on the camera, but I did not do an X-brace in the back. And you can tell because actually this whole back section got bent down because it's not supported. So this was a really good test to prove the theory of why you do certain bars that you do. So again, this is the same design. These two bars are the bars we're talking about right now. And because these should have been triangulated down to these two corners, would have strengthened that, and then the X-brace in the center would have strengthened it as well. I mean, this collapsing in the center, the X-brace probably wouldn't have helped with, but these bars should have been continued and triangulated down, and that would have kept this rear bar from crushing down. So a good test. You know, this is roughly what the cage is going to look like. These windshield bars, I already said we're going to add in. So the width of these bars is going to determine where these windshield bars are going to start. And I was thinking most guys will run it at an opposite angle than what I have here. I built this, again, based on Ultra 4 rules. So this points all the way down to a node down by the chassis. It angles down just to make sure there's a better node. But we're going to probably angle it outside in. So these need to be a little bit wider apart. Probably a foot apart, I think, is typical, but we do some measuring. We're going to figure that out. All right, so I'm up here on the roof. I measured from the center of the outer tube to the center of this tube per the directions, and that puts them really close together. What is that? Let me see. Let's just go edge to edge. I mean, they're about 6 inches apart. Again, I think I have control of this. I don't think I'm confined to what they're telling me it should be, because I think it's too close together. I don't like it. I think I'm going to move them out probably a couple more inches per side. Okay, roll cage is all fitted and tacked in place with the exception of those center spreader bars and the upper windshield bar. I'm still tweaking the positioning of those just a little bit, but this is everything. This is all of the pieces of the Trail Gear rock defense cage mocked up in the Jeep. Now we're going to start adding a whole bunch of tubing to make this a good, solid, strong cage. So here's where I ended up with my spreader bars. I ended up sitting in the seat and tweaking them. TJ was guiding me to get them somewhat even spacing from my head to the outside, you know, from this post to this post, my head in the middle, trying to just eyeball it, get something that looks right. So that gave us 18 inches across the back from here to over here. So with that number, I got them centered up. So I measured, again, from here to here at 18, from there to there at 18, both sides, and it didn't look right. So then I thought, well, maybe this whole cage is skewed. So I measured from where this tube hooks onto where this one, and then vice versa up there to over there. And these side tubes are not parallel with the Jeep. They angle out just a little bit. So I found the difference, ended up 18 inches across the back, 19 3/8 up on the front. It looks straight. I'm happy with the spacing, so we're gonna go ahead and burn those in. The other dimension that I can provide, which I only took to make sure it was square, was I measured from this tube to the cage. That's 31 inches exactly on both sides. And one more thing to note, obviously the notch is here, same size tube to same size tube. It's gonna line up. But back here, this is a larger diameter, so you wanna make sure you center that so they look exactly the same on both sides. I'm sure I could measure, but I'm not that worried about it. I'm just gonna eyeball it and make sure they're as close to centered as I can before I tack them in place. Now we've got my harness bar supports tied in. Now it's time to make the actual harness bar. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna use my Harbor Freight tubing notcher. Right? You can say what you will about a Harbor Freight notcher, but it does the job. Now that I have it chucked up in the drill press, it's actually amazing. It works so much better. So we're gonna go ahead and measure. I've already notched this side of the tube, so we're gonna measure from that notch. Yeah, we're gonna have a little bit of grinding to do because I had to reposition it, but it really didn't turn out too bad. That's not a bad notch. It's pretty close. I think a little bit of persuading with a hammer and we'll be all right. So now that I've got it mostly in place, I haven't checked exactly where I want this yet. I might want it further back. I might want it further forward. I want to make sure I have full range of movement of my seat. I have just a little bit of room. Of course, my seat's reclined, but I don't care. I'm not ever going to have to recline my seats. So here we are with the dash bars. We're going to do the V, of course. One going this way, one going that way. So I went ahead and measured the center mark of both tubes and measured the 1 3/4 for my tube diameter, so I can kind of line this up outside of that to outside of where that's going to be. And I drew a line so I have an idea of the angle. I'm sure. Okay, moment of truth. I haven't pre-fitted anything. We're going to see if I eyeballed it well. Wow, if I slide it in place, line up on the center, line up here, it's not far off. I think we may just grind a little bit. Probably on this right edge here, left edge there. We should be able to get that fit pretty darn good. Seat of my Jeep. We've got the windshield bars all notched and fitting perfect. We're gonna go ahead and get these tacked in place. All right. Now that's going to strengthen things up. All right, so we've got it set up. We've got our zero set. We've zeroed our level at the pipe at its current angle. So we need to bend about a 20-degree angle, and we need that bend to be 9 inches from the end. So based on our test piece, I know that the bend starts about 3 1/4 in from the edge of this clamp. So we left about 6 inches here. We're going to go ahead and bend this up to 20 degrees. If I lock my jack first. Give myself a couple degrees over because it'll spring back some. So there's 21, 22 degrees. Alright guys, I am super excited at how well this has all turned out. I've wanted to build this cage for a decade anyway. Just a few bends up at the top of the X-brace just for a little more head clearance. Of course the bends for the harness bar support. Pretty much everything else is straight tube, which is stronger. So I just need to pull this cage out and finish weld everything, get it painted up, and put back in the Jeep. Remember how earlier in this video how I said how much fun I was having? Well, the fun has ended. Now it's time to start sanding this thing, getting it ready for paint. Sanding is not fun. Welding, fabricating, that was a good time. This, not so much. I'm tired. It's almost midnight. I think this is prepped as much as it's going to be. I'm going to wipe it down tomorrow and spray some color on it. Alright, so last night I went ahead and I did the bottom of the feet just so I could flip it up here when I'm done doing the bottom of all the tubes. Got everything wiped down with some acetone. Now we're going to put some color on it. Well, there, everything on the bottom side is now green. We gotta let it dry a little bit, we can flip it up and get the rest. Alright, I let everything on the bottom side tack up for a while. Got it flipped up. Now I'm gonna spray the top side, and I wanted to show you what I'm using. I'm actually using Duplicolor engine enamel. The only reason I'm doing that is because it comes in the right color. I can't find this specific shade of green in any other paint. Forward more on your side, Keith. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap up this cage build. I love this thing. It looks fantastic, and of course, it is safer. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you learned some things. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe. We'll see you next time.